know it's already enough that I did Summerpalooza 2 and Equestria Girls month in the months of July and August, where there was so much videos. But considering that we're getting back to normal schedules, I was planning onto reviewing this next year. But at the same time, since that it's gonna be a bit too late, and this is the perfect time to upload this video just days before it premieres on Cartoon Network, I honestly think that me expressing my thoughts on the We Bare Bears movie is probably the perfect time, because as far as I'm concerned, after finishing this movie, it's probably a great way to end off the We Bare Bears series. And considering that this is a movie, and I might talk about bits about the plot, I'm just going straight to what I actually enjoy about this movie. I may only reviewed 3 episodes from the show, and I don't usually keep track of a lot of cartoons, but after watching this movie, this really hooked me on watching more We Bare Bears episodes. Kind of like Steven Universe in the final episode where Steven leaves Beach City. And I'm not making this up. In my opinion, the We Bare Bears movie really shows how to end off a series that started in 2015. And then since we're in 2020, well, Cartoon Network shows are coming to an end because, let's be honest, the shows that are considered new or sometimes interesting when it comes to other fans, the only show that didn't get cancelled or came to an end is Teen Titans Go. Yes, I'm not kidding. Teen Titans Go is the cartoon that came before this show and Steven Universe, and it's still going on air. Really goes to show how bad of a cartoon can reach to so much popularity. But I'm getting off topic. I just want to say that the plot of this movie really works for the 3 main characters. Throughout the majority of this film, well, not really majority, but only 3 parts of it, we see Grizzly the Bear having 2 dreams of where he actually meets Panda and Ice Bear. And believe me when I say this, is that I think this is pretty much the biggest reasons onto why we're getting the spin-off of We Baby Bear Bear, or We Bear Baby Bears spin-off, instead of a continuation from this. But I'm gonna get to that later. All I can say is that the way that this movie starts off with the main characters meeting each other, even though it ends up in Grizzly's dream, I really think that's probably a way to actually show what Grizzly the Bear can actually see what he went through of meeting his friends who are also bears. Believe me, I actually think that this is pretty much a way to start off a movie that isn't involved fancy adventures like Adventure Time or Steven Universe. And to make things interesting, considering that these are literally the only 3 bears, and I say 3 bears, I didn't say animals, because we all know full well that there's so many animals walking in the streets in the city that We Bare Bears are, that the 3 main characters are living. You can really tell that people just cannot usually stand them, because believe me, when they were trying to get to the food stand to get something that came from Canada, they completely ruined the wedding with also other stuff. And believe me, Murphy, who is the police officer, completely shows the other citizens about how they'll just complain on how the bears are just doing their own thing, despite the fact that it's really bothering them. I honestly think that if this happened somewhere in the 4 seasons, even if I didn't watch them, I honestly think that this plot doesn't usually work. But considering that I've seen this, and the fact that this is the 4th episode or movie that I'm watching from We Bare Bears, I can honestly see what they're trying to do for this type of story. For me personally, the bears are just not usually aware of what they're doing in the world that they spend most of the time in the city. I know full well that the bears do go to the city, but not a lot. From my knowledge, despite not watching most of the episodes, I really think that they spend most of the time in the woods. Like in Hurricane Hall, well, Grizzly just trying to help the other characters completely getting back in before the storm gets worse. And I understand that Ice Bear did actually walk with one of the supporting characters in the city, but considering that he's literally the only character who doesn't usually act like Grizzly or Panda, I really think that's mostly passable. Because as far as I'm concerned, this is pretty much a plot that actually kind of works for the situation that Panda, Grizzly, and Ice Bear are going through. The goal is to actually become internet famous, which is something that they tried to do at the beginning of the show, which is an episode that I review video makers, and then they completely use all the cords from so many places, satellites from the city. If that is something that people are just, if this is something that these characters are usually doing in order to actually get some kind of attention from other people, I would probably pass. I'm not trying to make this up, because believe me, when they try to actually do this, try to get some kind of attention from the people, from the citizens of the city, it turned out well, despite the fact that some people, mostly gamers, are mostly annoyed from this. And the fact that Grizzly's scheme is actually working out so that they can actually become internet famous. But the thing is, due to the amount of power that they're using at the moment, it caused a huge blackout, which caused all the technology, including phones in the city, completely shut off. Which is obviously the final straw. I mean, it's one thing that they completely ruin the wedding and completely bump into so many people while trying to get to the Canada car store, or whatever you call it. And when you completely see them completely getting so much criticism from the citizens, you can really tell that this movie really knows how to start off a really good 12 minutes. Because we are about to be introduced by the wildlife animal control villain antagonist of this movie called Trout. Believe me, since this is the first time we actually see him, you can really tell that he's really not really something that you should mess with. Since that he completely shows that nature is completely a good place to go, but it's also a place where dangerous animals, mainly bears, can easily attack citizens. You can really tell that people will easily go on by going to the side of Trout and going against the bears even more. Believe me, I honestly think that even though that some of this is really pushing it, it is still true, since that this is what nature is like in the real world. And considering that the bears don't usually do this kind of stuff and is mostly friendly, this is something that can actually work if the bears were if there were different kinds of animals who are meat eating and predators. So if you completely switch these characters with different animals, then it'll probably have the same effect. And besides, I honestly think that the situations where the bears are just trying to go to the animal control center because of what Trout just said really leads to what the majority of this movie is going to be like. Because believe me when I say this, is that for the rest of this movie, it just involves the main characters who got rescued by Charlie in order to go to a journey to go to Canada, which is the land of the free, where everyone is completely respectful and completely okay with bears completely going around in the land of Canada. I don't usually know much about Canada, and I don't know how animals, mainly bears, are mostly friendly, but then again, there's so much that I do not know about the geography of the lands. But at the same time, it's literally the place where the main characters need to be in order to be safe while also finding a new home. You have no idea how much this movie really convinced me to actually understand what the characters are going through. Even if I didn't spend most of my time watching all the episodes, I really think that this movie really does tell a story involving the Grizz just trying to take his friends, or brothers in this case, to Canada since that it's the place where they can be safe from Trout while also finding a new home. Believe me, the majority of this movie, mainly the middle, involves them just trying to get away from the wildlife control people, and also just trying to actually think of a way to get to Canada before it's too late. I truly believe whether I actually see these types of plots of the characters just trying to leave home or trying to find a place to live, I've seen this plot so many times, but the difference in this movie is that the characters are animals, and when they completely are dealing with the situation or just trying to evacuate while also trying to find a different hibernation in this planet, is honestly something that animals would usually do, like go south for the winter, but that's usually what birds and seagulls do in the sky. And the fact that they're actually taking advantage of the plot by having the antagonist be way more serious and also trying to actually keep bears into an environment where they don't harm other creatures, this can actually make you convinced that at the end of this movie where we actually get to see multiple bears who are mostly similar to Grizzly while also not being very vicious and brutal to other people, it really goes to show that this world setting really knows how to actually make the bears a lot more likable, and the fact that it's not mainly about bears attacking people and stuff like that. I mean, I think that what this movie is trying to do is having Trout actually express what the bears are like in the past, but in the present day, it just isn't the same. Granted, it's mostly what humans go through when it comes to the 20th century and the 21st century, but since this is bears we're talking about, I honestly think that they pretty much want to make the bears not completely vicious or stuff like that. Again, I did not watch all the episodes, but from what this movie is trying to show me is that I honestly think that all the bears in this aren't really what they were in real life. And when the bits where we see Panda completely refusing to go to Canada because he likes completely staying here, despite the fact that there's no other option, you can really understand the relationship between Grizz and Panda, because after watching this movie, I can actually understand what the characters' motivations are. While Ice Bear is mostly noticeable when it comes to his quotes and stuff like that, Wizzy Bear is the one who comes up with the schemes, while Panda Bear just is mostly the voice of reason. I really have to say that this movie involving the relationship involving Grizzly the bear and Ice and Panda really makes this movie a lot more interesting when you actually see the situations that they're dealing with. There's a song where they're about to discuss how Canada is a really, really great place to be at. Well, nothing bad happens and no wildlife control going on. But once that's over with, they're also dealing with the situation while just trying to avoid the animal control people. Otherwise, they will probably be, well, just like these animals, like I mentioned. Believe me, this really made me show some kind of an understanding of what the We Bears series is trying to do involving the characters. Because when they finally arrive at Canada, just behind the border gate, the guard demands passports so that they can enter, but unfortunately the bears don't have passports, which means they cannot get into Canada, which leads to the emotional scene involving Panda and Grizzly. Believe me, out of all the times that we've seen cartoons that are considered great from Cartoon Network, with this being the final one, which is a 2010s cartoons, which is mostly ahead of Steven Universe that came to an end in March, while this came to an end in June. I honestly think that these moments really go to show that Cartoon Network won't probably be the same in this decade. Now, don't get me wrong. I know there's other cartoons going on besides Teen Titans Go that aren't reruns, and I can understand that will always start this decade, even though that we're getting close to the end of this year. But whenever I actually look at this scene, I can really tell that Cartoon Network will probably not have the cartoons that they used to have, like Adventure Time, Regular Show, The Amazing World of Gumball, Steven Universe, and this show. Why do I say that? Because the scene between Panda and Grizzly Bear completely arguing with each other, while Panda says that they're just friends, we're just friends that make up a story or something, that really makes this scene a lot more investible, especially when we're at the third act of the movie. Believe me, it's honestly difficult to actually think that this cartoon was the final cartoon that came to an end after Steven Universe. I know it keeps mentioning Steven Universe a lot, but since I'm starting to watch the first episodes from that show, while also just trying to be invested with the characters, I honestly think that the finale of that show, despite being a lot more better than this one, won't probably have an argument between Panda and Grizzly having a situation towards the end of the series. Granted, it did happen when Steven turned into a monster while he's just trying to deal with his problems, but unlike that, I honestly think that the argument between Grizz and Panda are just something that it's just something that can actually kind of makes you relate to what they actually went through. I mean, if you watch the entire show, unlike me, you can really tell that they have been through a lot. But when they're in a situation like this where they have to find a new place to live, that is where you can actually see how these characters can take something seriously. Well, specifically Panda the bear, because Grizz, like what Panda says, he's so in denial, and the fact that he's always comes up with schemes in order to make things better, even though that it just completely backfires and just makes things worse. Believe me, I actually think that this is the type of stuff that actually kind of works, because by the time the argument between the characters were done, we get to see Trot completely capturing them while also being put into the cage just before they reach the Canada. Granted, they didn't succeed. Granted, the pandas didn't succeed their plan, but still. And it's really depressing in the fact that even though that they do fight, despite the fact that Panda is just getting sick of just going around circles, I don't consider this a true breakup, because since that they're bears and they completely meet each other at the beginning of the movie, well, not really the beginning of the movie, but the beginning of their relationship in time, I honestly think that the reasons onto why they completely got back together at the end is mainly the fact that they're literally the fact that they have each other. And they don't usually go around in places, well, in the real world, where those bears on the loose in the city. Animal control will obviously be able to stop the situation. So I honestly think that this is the type of stuff that actually kind of works for the relationship between the three main characters. And when you completely see that Trot is just trying to trap all the bears, which is animal abuse, which is the words from Murphy, the police officer, you can really understand onto why Trot is a really, really menacing villain. Not really one of the menacing villains when it comes to everything, but when it comes to cartoons like this, he's mostly up there. Granted, I don't watch all cartoons, but at the same time, I honestly think that Trot really did deliver something in this entire movie. As for the other characters, mainly Num Num and the characters that I talked about in my Christmas reviews, in my Christmas parties, and the Hurricane Hall review, they're in this, but at the same time, they're not really the main focus on this, which is something you probably expect when it comes to supporting characters in a movie that you watch since the beginning. But I will say that the characters that the bears meet with, which is the other animals who are also internet famous, really makes you understand on how they actually have some kind of a personality, because with the dramatic cow being dramatic and stuff like that, which is something that they did 3 times in this movie, the animals are not really welcome to the other animals who are not popular like them. Believe me. And when the characters completely say that they just had to leave home because they don't have a place to live, and the fact that they are not popular like them, you can really actually relate to what the other characters feel, because the bears completely say that the people just don't respect them because they're different, because they're bears. And the angry cat character says that she or he just isn't mad. This is just basically his face or her face. Sorry, I just don't know the genders of this movie that much. And when it comes to talk about the other characters just trying to deal with struggles and just trying to fit in with other stuff to other societies, I really think that that's probably one of the biggest highlights in this movie. You would think that they would probably kick the bears out, but considering that they completely said that they're dealing with a midlife crisis and allowing them to stay, it really makes you relate to the other animals more, just like the bears in this movie. In the beginning of this movie, where we see the bears just trying to rush to their destination while hearing the We Bare Bears intro, which isn't a remaster, it's just the plain old intro, and the fact that not a lot has changed, I honestly think that this is pretty much a great way to actually show what the animals are dealing with in this situation in the world that they're in. Believe me when I say this. It's honestly amazing to actually think that they actually come up with this idea to have the animals just trying to get some kind of attention, but at the same time cannot fit in a society like humans do. Because as far as I'm concerned, the fact that they're willing to actually fix up the van that was destroyed while trying to actually protect them while Trout and the goons are just trying to stop him, really makes you actually feel some kind of relatability in these animals. Granted, this is the only time you're ever going to see them, and they don't return later in the movie. But as far as I'm concerned, I really think that they probably know how to actually make the other animals just like the bears, except they have some kind of a purpose onto why popular animals are yelled, and haven't think of the idea that they're also not in a society as humans do. As humans usually do, is what I mean. Getting back to Trout and the goons, the only parts that we actually get to see in action sequence in this movie is mainly the chase between the cops and the bears. The first part, the first action scene involving this is pretty much my favorite out of the entire movie. Not because of how serious in the lengths that the bears had to get away from getting arrested by the police, but also the fact that they actually went to a magma or a mining facility in order to escape the police from getting arrested. Believe me, every time I see this, I immediately think of the scene where Anakin and Padme in Attack of the Clones are in the droid factory while Padme is completely in the pot, or whatever you call it, and it's about to be burning with lava magma or something. I know it's called magma, but at the same time, I just don't know how it's pronounced right. And the fact that she's actually released thanks to R2-D2's coding. Granted, this is nothing like that, but at the same time, that's what I usually think when it comes to this screenshot in mind. Getting back to the action scene, I really think that they pretty much did a good job, because the animals completely changed the bear's truck into a missile, while also completely having so much energy so that they can actually go on for a bit longer. Well, if they didn't use the ammo, that is. Because the ammo that they use is purple flop or something that is a purple solo or something. And they use it to stop the bad guys from completely capturing them. I'm not kidding. That's probably the best thing I've actually seen, where the animals are willing to help the bears escape without getting arrested. Especially when we actually get to see this, which is the thumbnail of this review, Well, Trout is just trying to catch Panda before getting away. The Murphy stopped because there was a dead end or a cliff that can easily lead to a huge crash with the characters. But thanks to the speed and the velocity of the ammo that they have involving Purple Flub or something, they managed to get back onto the other side of the track. This, in my opinion, is probably one of the greatest ways to actually make an action scene entertaining and original. And whether I actually completely see the Bales just trying to get out of this situation, it really makes this action scene a whole lot more entertaining. And it really goes to show that they really know how to handle a serious action scene. Well, it's mainly focusing on Bales that aren't like Steven Universe or Adventure Time. And I'm saying that because those shows are full of action and adventure. While this, even though there are awesome adventures, it's still a slice of life series with some bits and pieces of action in the middle of it. That's what makes this action scene a lot more entertaining and unique. As for the climax of this movie, well, we actually get to see Grizzly remember the time, well, he actually became brothers with Panda and Ice Bear. I really think that that's probably a great way to actually give Grizzly the Bear some kind of attention in this, since that he was the one who actually helped his brothers or friends to actually escape from the wildlife control people in order to move on with a different life. Well, a different home, that is. Because when the baby bears completely dodged the train because there was a open spot in the train tracks, missing wood thing, they completely survived while also becoming brothers. Don't worry, I am gonna get to the wee bear baby bears things at the end of this review, because as far as I'm concerned, this is something I need to discuss when it comes to the fact that Wee Bear Bears is over. And after completely remembering it, Grizzly Bear, with taking the motivation from the other bears, escape his cage while also just trying to stop Trout from completely taking his brothers away to different countries. And believe me, I actually think that this is pretty much a great way to end off the final minutes of this movie. And when you completely see the bears completely fighting off against Trout and putting him into a cage, you can really tell that that's probably a great way to stop a villain when it comes to the villain being a wildlife control freak. Okay, not really a control freak, but completely intelligent who's just trying to stop bears from wreaking havoc, even though in reality they were all friendly at the end. Not only that, one of the fences caused a fire on one of the trees, causing a huge wildfire in the forest that the main characters and bears are in. And the only way to actually escape from the wildfire is when Murphy, the police, completely used a helicopter to save the bears, but unfortunately he cannot land directly to the ground due to the fire spreading. So, for what the series did in the beginning, they completely stack up all the bears in order to make a ladder, which is just like the Ants movie where Zeke came up with the idea by building an ant ladder. But at the same time, the bears and ants, there's so much, and there's really differences when it comes to size. And when they managed to actually do the ladder or stacking up, they're on the news while the other characters and citizens are noticing that they're on the news. And believe me, this is honestly one of the biggest reasons onto why the We Bear Bears movie the We Bear Bears movie had to end at some point. But again, I'm getting to that later. So after they completely saved all the animals from getting burned, and just this close on reaching the ladder, reaching the plane, Trout The villain managed to escape his cage while getting into the plane, which means that there's no other way for the bears to reach safety. But Murphy, who has been completely being picked on from Trout through the majority of this movie for being, well, for being a full of charm while also being silly, decided to get back on Trout by shoving a donut in his mouth, because in the majority of this movie, Trout shoved things in Murphy's mouth multiple times. So this is pretty much a way of getting it back at him, which is actually kind of hilarious. And then while completely handcuffing Trout by the other side of the plane or something, the bears escaped without getting burned, which means that all the bears have survived from the wildfire situation in the forest. And I'm gonna talk about the ending eventually, but I should probably go discuss about the wee bear bears thing, which is the wee baby bears thing. Yeah, I know I keep mixing these things up, but at the same time, I'm trying to get used to the title of this show, even though it's been almost a year since I've watched the Christmas Parties episode. The two dream sequences, along with the subconscious from Grizzly seeing his lunker self, I think you can understand onto why this is the finale of the We Bear Bear series. Well, the main series, not the spin-off series, since I'm gonna get to that soon. I honestly think that seeing these two dream sequences really goes to show that Grizzly Bear just wanted to actually have some kind of an arc in this while having a motivation to save the other bears, while also be around with other characters like Panda and Ice Bear, since that in the sequence where they actually meet for the first time, I can really tell that the reasons for a we of a spin-off of this show is probably the best choice. And the sequence where we actually get to see Grizzly just trying to escape from Trout, which is also the train in his second dream sequence, and the fact that Panda and Ice Bear are completely captured by him, you can really tell that he's feeling a struggle, but just trying to actually make sure that he wants to make everything right for not only himself but for his brothers. I understand that this is mostly something that people may consider a debatable thing when it comes to the main character's relationship in this series, but for me personally, even though that, again, I did not watch all the episodes or most of them, I can really tell that after watching this movie, I can really think that the relationship really makes sense for what this series was, since it premiered on Cartoon Network in 2015. And when Murphy made so many changes involving the bears not getting arrested and the fact returning home where they belong, not only they become famous because of them saving several bears from a wildfire incident, but all the bears who are from the prison that they're trapped because of Trout are now living their lives with other humans. This, in my opinion, is one of the biggest reasons onto why I think that the We Bear Bear series had to come to an end with this movie. Because besides Steven Universe having Steven leaving in order to become a human for his own life, I honestly think that continuing this is just basically seeing what we've actually witnessed. Because if this was actually something that happened after the finale of the movie, we would probably be seeing We Bear Bear's future, which is gonna be like Steven Universe future that premiered in December of last year and came to an end of March of this year. And the difference between this and that is because everyone is happy at the end, and the fact that Grizzly, Ice Bear, and Panda are just staying at the place that they want to be, because that's where they became friends with. That's where they live. So I honestly think that having the continuation by having the bears just trying to deal with real life situations in the city does kind of work, but at the same time, it's really unnecessary, and I think that seeing this ending is probably a great way to wrap it up. Especially the credits where we actually get to see the bears completely hanging out with the other animals, since that they're free to actually go to their society, something that Grizzly wanted to do, since that they completely saved all the animals from the wildfire incident. I really have to say that the ending of this really made me emotionally happy to see these characters getting what they want, while also having the humans understand that bears just aren't what they used to. Well, for this world at least. I honestly think that this world building in this show really knows how to handle it in a slice of life way, instead of an action or adventure thing like Adventure Time or Steven Universe was. And the fact that a spin-off involving the 3 main characters who are going to be baby bears, I honestly think that it could work, but at the same time, even though that there might be some kind of announcement or promo of them completely becoming friends in some point at the end of this year or next year, it's gonna be really interesting of what they're going to do, since that it's gonna take place before the main series. So I honestly think that I might be considered on watching this, but at the same time, I might be able to only review the first episode, and the fact that I had to watch the other episodes from the main series before I get to the spin-off. I don't know if it's gonna have multiple seasons, it may only have 1 or so, but for what they're gonna do for the spin-off series involving Ice Bear, Panda, and Grizzly becoming baby bears, I honestly think that that's gonna probably be a lot more, there's probably gonna be a lot more questions that need to be asked before we actually make them by watching the first promo of this. Well, by the time of this recording at least. I don't know what's gonna happen, but at the same time, I might be able to actually see something in the spin-off that can actually caught my attention in the main series more, so that we can actually get to see the relationship between the bears a lot more when they get older and older. So that's basically my review on the We Bare Bears movie. Yeah, another long review, but what do you actually expect? I know I didn't do a lot of editing and stuff like that like I usually do, but I was planning on reviewing this next year or part of We Bare Bears month in the future. But considering that September is the month, well, it's before Halloween, something I'm going to do in November, and the fact that December is gonna be what I do with Christmas videos, I honestly think that this is the perfect time of me reviewing this instead of doing it later. I know some of you guys are gonna correct me on the mistakes that I did in this review, and the fact that I don't keep up with this show, and the fact that this is the 4th installment that I'm watching from We Bare Bears, that's just basically what I feel. Sometimes cartoons, even in 2015 or earlier, I don't usually keep track on. Not because I didn't have a YouTube channel back then, but the fact that I just couldn't get into them that early. But considering that I'm into these shows now, even though that they came to an end, I can actually have my perspective of what I actually feel about these types of cartoons. Now granted, I could have done a lot more better when it comes to my opinions on the other subjects in this, but at the same time, We Bare Bears is a slice of life series, which I'm mostly into slice of life stuff. Adventure and action, I can handle, but not 100%. So, I really hope that you actually understand. For me personally, I still enjoy this movie. Granted, I gave it enough praise and I didn't actually look at some of the problems with this movie, but then again, I'm really trying my best to actually keep my focus on all the other materials that's been going on in this movie. Because as far as I'm concerned, I can say that this is a good way to end off We Bare Bears while also having a spin-off being set up in the future. And yes, like I mentioned, I am gonna try to, I might be thinking on doing a review of it of the first episode. Because again, we don't know what's gonna happen. But I can say that the setup that they did involving the main characters being little is probably gonna be is probably a good way to actually give people some kind of hope for the spin-off. Because as far as I'm concerned, Cartoon Network at this time is probably going to be in trouble. Not because of the fact that the shows are coming to an end, but the fact that they're reaching into the next decade. They had some issues in the second half of the 2000s. They had some kind of good luck in the 2010s, but here, it's always going to be in question. All I can say is that Cartoon Network is slightly better than Nickelodeon and mostly Disney Channel. So I honestly think that they still have a chance to actually be some kind of relevant by having newer cartoons for this decade. But then again, we don't know what's going to happen. So at the same time, we're just going to have to wait. All I can say is that if you completely are waiting for this movie to come out in the premiere on Cartoon Network, I can guarantee you that you will not be disappointed. Then again, you're watching a really lengthy review of mine discussing everything I need to discuss, because I've been on YouTube way longer and I'm gaining more experience. I'm making more opinions on each subject in each episode I talk about. I really think that this movie will probably give you a good impression of what you feel about We Bare Bears. And the fact that this is the final cartoon from the 2010s that came to an end from Cartoon Network. So I really hope that you give this movie a shot once it premieres in Cartoon Network in this month. I give this movie an 8 out of 10.